There comes a time in every chosen one's journey when silence screams louder than answers, when the path seems hidden behind fog, and every step feels like it's leading further into the unknown. You're walking through a season that looks barren, unexplainable, even unjust. But here's what most people don't understand. This silence is sacred. This confusion is intentional. This season isn't a punishment, it's a preparation. You see, what you're facing right now wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to teach you how to hold peace in the storm, how to walk without visible light, how to trust your steps when the path isn't clear. Because only the chosen are given this kind of training. Ordinary people are given comfort. But those who are called, those who are set apart, are often stripped of what's familiar, so they can discover something eternal inside themselves. If you're still watching this video, I invite you to stay with me until the end. This isn't just a message, it's an activation. And if it resonates with you, leave your most heartfelt wishes in the comments below, along with the number 777. It's a divine code reminding the universe that you're aligned with a groundbreaking energy. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's more than a ritual. It's a spark. It's a sign to the world that you're ready to step into your higher timeline. Let the universe feel your vibration as you reveal your hopes. Now, chosen one, let's go deeper. You're not crazy for feeling like things don't add up right now. You're not weak for wanting to understand why things had to happen the way they did. This isn't just some random chaos. The season you're in is one that was whispered into motion long before you knew its name. The people that left, the opportunities that slipped through your fingers, the breakdowns, the loneliness. It's not meaningless. In fact, it's sacred. Because this season is writing a language inside of you that you'll soon use to speak life into others. There's something divine about being confused and faithful at the same time. That's where heaven meets earth, where trust becomes your oxygen. You were never meant to have all the answers right away. You were never meant to feel understood by everyone. You're not here to blend in, chosen one. You're here to break molds, to confront generational cycles, to shift atmospheres. And yes, it's heavy. You've probably been waking up with pressure in your chest, feeling like you're falling behind, like everyone else has it figured out while you're stuck watching the clock. But let me say this clearly. This season will make sense soon. The fog will lift. The silence will speak. The doors that closed were never rejection. They were redirection. You weren't being abandoned. You were being hidden for the right reveal. The people who misunderstood you, who walked away, who labeled you as too much or too strange, they were never meant to see the full version of you anyway. Their role was to exit before the expansion. They were only actors in the setup. The real story begins now, with you in full awareness of your identity. And identity is the most dangerous thing to hell. Once you know who you are, the battle shifts. You stop begging for validation and start walking in revelation. And let's talk about that internal warfare. The nights where you felt so low you could barely breathe. The days when hope felt like a memory instead of a promise. Those weren't just mental attacks. They were evidence that something holy was trying to be born through you. The enemy doesn't waste his energy on people who aren't a threat. If you've been under fire, it's because you carry something fireproof inside. The pain that made you question everything is the very thing that's shaping your next level. Your tears weren't wasted. They were watering a harvest you haven't seen yet. And yes, I know that waiting hurts. I know being misunderstood drains the soul. But you're not meant to break in this place. You're meant to rise with wisdom, with scars that shine, with a voice that trembles the darkness. This season might look like delay. It might feel like rejection. But spiritually, it's alignment. You're being placed exactly where you need to be. That job you didn't get, that person who left, that moment you thought was your last chance, it was all protection disguised as loss. Divine rerouting. And when the season shifts, and it will shift, you'll look back and thank the silence for what it built inside you. Somewhere deep inside, you've known that you were never meant to live an ordinary life. Even before the pain, even before the setbacks, there was a quiet knowing, a whisper that said, you're here for more. And it's not about pride. It's not about thinking you're better than others. It's about recognizing the weight on your soul that no one else seems to carry. That invisible responsibility, that heightened awareness. that burden to see truth where others only see surface. Chosen one, this season is not here to break you. It's here to reveal you. The reason things feel so intense right now is because your life is being calibrated for destiny. You've prayed for purpose, for truth, for clarity. But those prayers require pressure. Gold isn't formed in comfort. Oil isn't pressed from olives gently. And diamonds aren't made in daylight. Every powerful force of nature is birthed through intense resistance. That's what this is. Your pressure season. Your sacred storm. And I get it. Your timeline doesn't match your expectations. You thought you'd be further by now. You thought the healing would have kicked in already. You thought the pain would have stopped echoing. But chosen ones aren't rushed through transformation. You're sculpted in layers. You're being refined. You're learning to carry something not everyone can hold. Depth, the kind of depth that can reach broken hearts and lift them. That's why you've been broken, so you could understand how to rebuild. And maybe you're tired of trying to explain yourself to people who never really listened. Maybe you're done shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never built to hold you. Good. That tiredness is holy. That frustration is sacred. It's the final warning before your soul rebels against false alignment. You were never meant to play small. You were never meant to silence your truth to make others comfortable. Let them misunderstand. Let them walk away. What's coming for you will require full authenticity. No masks, no compromises. This is a season where you stop proving your worth and start protecting your peace. Where you stop chasing what's not for you and start attracting what matches your light. You don't have to beg for doors that were never yours. You don't have to force connections that drain you. When the alignment is divine, it flows. When the people are right, it feels safe. When the path is yours, you'll recognize it. Not because it's easy, but because your soul will feel seen walking it. So breathe. You're not off course. You're not late. You're not behind. You're exactly where heaven needs you right now. Sometimes the greatest growth happens in silence, in shadows, in isolation, because it's there, when everything is stripped away, that you remember what truly matters, who you are, whose you are, and why you came here in the first place. You were chosen not for ease, but for elevation. You were sent here not to be understood, but to be undeniable. And soon, everything will make sense. The pain, the patience, the pauses. The delay wasn't denial. It was divine design. Because when the light comes, you won't just shine, you'll ignite others. You didn't come this far to question yourself now. The very struggles that once made you doubt your worth are now the pillars holding up the strength you become. Every whisper of fear, every tremble of loneliness, every moment you looked around and saw no one standing beside you, it was all part of the refining fire. You were never alone. You were just becoming. And they knew it. The ones who underestimated you, who scoffed at your dreams, who tried to tether your wings to their own fear, they sensed something was different about you. They couldn't quite name it, but they knew you weren't made from the same mold. While others folded under pressure, you cracked, but you didn't collapse. You shattered in a way that allowed more light to enter. You broke open, not apart. And from that space of vulnerability, you began to see everything more clearly. There's something sacred about being misunderstood. It's the secret training ground for the chosen. You weren't made to fit in because you were sent to stand out, and not in the shallow, performative way the world rewards, but in the kind of depth that unsettles people's comfort. Your authenticity exposed their denial. Your pain made them look at wounds they refused to feel. Your resilience reminded them of the strength they buried. That's why they resisted you. That's why they feared your becoming. But now, you're entering a season where the things that confused you will suddenly begin to make sense. The people who left weren't meant to stay. Not because you were unworthy, but because they weren't strong enough to walk the road you've been assigned. The delays weren't denials. They were divine setups for bigger alignments. The pain wasn't punishment. It was a hidden preparation. You're not behind. You're right on schedule. The chosen ones often feel delayed, overlooked, passed by. But that's only because the timing over your life isn't based on the world's clock. You operate under eternal timing, divine coordination. What takes others 5 years, you'll accomplish in 1. What seems impossible to others will unfold effortlessly in your hands when the moment is right. And the season you're walking into now, it will prove that all along you were in alignment. The confusion, the stillness, the uncertainty, it was all part of the orchestration. You're about to look back at this wilderness and realize it wasn't a punishment. It was protection. Had you gone forward when you begged to move, you would have walked straight into traps disguised as opportunities. You would have poured your heart into hands that were never meant to hold it. You would have given your energy to systems that were built to use you, not support you. But God held you back, not to punish, but to preserve. He allowed the silence not to destroy you, but to clear the noise around you, so you could hear your own soul again. And now that you've learned how to walk alone, you're about to walk into rooms you were born for. You're no longer shaken by their rejection, because you've learned to recognize redirection. You don't flinch when things fall apart, because you know things fall apart before they come together better. They'll see soon. The ones who doubted, the ones who laughed, the ones who whispered that you were too much or not enough, they'll witness the elevation, and they'll wonder how it happened. They'll try to trace your steps, but they won't be able to replicate your process, because what you've walked through wasn't made to be understood by everyone. It was tailor-made for your soul. You were chosen for it, designed for it, and that's why it didn't break you. That's why, even when the storm howled, you remained rooted. Even when the ground beneath you shifted, you kept walking, because something in you knew this season was part of a larger plan. The chaos wasn't random. The losses weren't wasted. The tears weren't in vain. They were all seeds. And those seeds are blooming now. Not just around you, but within you. Your heart is more open. Your voice more certain. Your spirit stronger. The people you're about to meet, the doors that are about to open, the blessings that are about to pour in, they're not miracles. They're manifestations of the healing you chose. They're reflections of the alignment you now walk in. There's no need to prove anything anymore. You don't have to explain your path to those who never try to understand it. You don't have to justify your healing, your boundaries, your silence. You've earned your peace. You've wept for it. You've bled for it. And now you get to live in it. This season will make sense. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you now carry wisdom where you once held confusion. You now see purpose where you once saw pain. You no longer need validation because you walk with revelation. You didn't come this far to question your strength. You came this far to use it. Everything you've experienced, every detour, every silence, every unanswered prayer wasn't meant to derail you. It was there to refine you. This season may have felt like a breaking point, but in truth, it was a building point, a sacred transition where the old versions of you fell away, and something ancient, something eternal, began to rise from within. You weren't being dismantled. You were being reassembled. Your soul always knew. Even when your mind screamed in confusion, even when your heart ached with abandonment, there was a deep knowing buried beneath it all, a knowing that whispered, "Hold on," a knowing that refused to die, even when everything else in your life seemed to be falling apart. That knowing kept you grounded. That knowing is who you truly are. And now, that knowing is becoming your power. People talk about rebirth like it's a gentle process. But the truth is, it's messy. It's raw. It requires you to let go of versions of yourself you once clung to for survival. It forces you to confront shadows, face fears, shed skins. But it's in that shedding, in that stripping away, that your true light begins to shine. Not the curated light that pleases others, but the wild, unfiltered light that was sealed into your being before you ever took your first breath. They couldn't break you, not because they didn't try, but because what's divine can't be destroyed. They may have delayed your steps, but they could never cancel your purpose. Because the one who called you didn't place your destiny in the hands of man. It's locked in eternity. And this season, it's the moment you start to see why it had to unfold this way. You had to feel what it was like to be overlooked, so you'd never become arrogant with attention. You had no rejection so deeply that when true alignment arrived, you wouldn't mistake it for noise. You had to stand in silence so long that now, when the door opens, you'll walk through it with reverence, not entitlement. You had to lose parts of your old world, so you could build a one that's truly yours. The storm wasn't sent to destroy you. It was sent to destroy what you no longer needed. Old patterns, old attachments, old illusions. They had to go, because you're not just stepping into a new season, you're stepping into a new identity. One where fear no longer writes your story. One where doubt no longer leads your decisions. One where the power you use to search for outside of yourself is now something you carry within. And let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them project. You've outgrown the need to be understood. You're no longer molding yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for you. You're no longer shrinking your voice to maintain peace. You've learned that real peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of alignment. And you, chosen one, are finally aligned. It doesn't mean you'll never feel pain again. It means pain no longer has permission to define you. It doesn't mean the journey becomes easy. It means you become unshakable. What once broke you now builds you. What once made you doubt now reminds you of your faith. You've entered a level of consciousness where you no longer react. You respond. You no longer chase. You attract. You no longer beg. You allow. This is divine maturity. You'll begin to notice how things that used to drain you can no longer reach you. Not because you've hardened, but because you've healed. And healed people have different frequencies. You'll walk into rooms and shift atmospheres, not because of your words, but because of your energy. You'll become the calm in other people's storms, the light in their dark, the voice of reason in their chaos. And you won't need a stage. You won't need validation. Your presence will be enough, because you finally understand who you are, not the version molded by trauma, not the mask shaped by survival, but the real you, the eternal you, the one who was called before the pain, the one who was chosen before the rejection, the one who has always been enough. This season is revealing that version of you, and everything is aligning, not outside first, but inside, because the moment you shift internally, your external world begins to mirror it. And that's why things are starting to move. That's why people are falling away, and doors are opening and peace is rising, because your vibration has changed. Your vision has changed. Your value has changed. You've stepped into the frequency of fulfillment. And while others chase, you'll attract. While others fight, you'll flow. While others strive, you'll surrender and receive. Not because you're better, but because you're aligned. Not because you force it, but because you finally let go. This season will make sense not because everything will suddenly be easy, but because you'll see that everything, every delay, every tear, every silence, was a divine strategy. You've reached a threshold, chosen one, a place where you can no longer return to who you were, and yet the fullness of who you're becoming hasn't fully arrived. This in-between space is sacred. It's not punishment, it's preparation. It's where the deeper work is done, where silence speaks louder than words, where stillness becomes your greatest teacher. This is where you're refined, not defined. It's easy to mistake this season as stagnation, but don't be fooled. Just because your eyes can't see the movement doesn't mean the movement isn't happening. God often works in the unseen, in the depths of your soul, in the quiet corners of your mind, in the healing of things you forgot you buried. And that internal work, though invisible, is the foundation for everything that's about to bloom. Because what's coming next cannot be built on brokenness. It can't be fueled by bitterness. It can't be led by your wounded ego. What's coming requires clarity, purity, depth, and that's exactly what this season has been forming in you. It's been emptying you so that heaven can fill you. You've been trusting in the dark, believing in the silence, holding on through the storms, and heaven has taken notice. The breakthrough you've prayed for is not just about one answered request. It's about becoming the kind of person who can carry what you've asked for, because the blessing isn't just about arrival. It's about endurance, sustainability, wisdom. It's about making sure you don't sabotage what you've been destined to steward. And that's why the process has been long, because your purpose is eternal. Many have mistaken your quietness for weakness. They've seen your isolation and assumed it was punishment. But what they didn't see was the transformation happening in the cocoon, the whispers you received, the strength that was built in the breaking, the sacred instructions only meant for your ears. You weren't being hidden for rejection. You were being preserved for impact. This season will make sense when the right doors open and you walk through them with power, not pride. When the right people come and you love them without fear. When the platform arrives and you stand not as someone who needs applause, but as someone who carries truth. You were never being delayed. You were being shaped. And here's the part no one talks about. The preparation is the blessing because it rewires your internal compass. It teaches you to move with wisdom, not urgency, to respond from spirit, not emotion, to lead with conviction, not control. And this is what terrifies darkness the most. Not your rise, but the fact that you rose correctly, that you rose whole, that you came through the fire without losing your heart. You become dangerous, not because you fight, but because you don't have to. Your authority is silent. Your energy is potent. Your peace is disruptive. And you didn't learn this through ease. You learned it through fire, through wilderness, through moments where you thought it was over, but it wasn't. Because the story was never about what you lost. It was always about what you found. Your power, your calling, your alignment, your identity. And now, you're beginning to understand that even the pain had a purpose. That what tried to break you ended up awakening you. That what was meant to destroy you pushed you deeper into truth. That the things you once cried over are now the very things that matured you. You no longer resent the journey. You bless it. Because without it, you wouldn't be who you are. And who you are now is someone who no longer begs for clarity. You create it. Someone who no longer fears endings. You honor them. Someone who no longer chases love. You embody it. You become the version of yourself you always needed. You become the answer to prayers you forgot you prayed. And the most beautiful part? You're not done. There are layers still unfolding. Realms still opening. Visions still being revealed. But this time you're ready. You're grounded. You're not looking for outside confirmation. You carry confirmation in your bones. You walk into rooms not wondering if you belong, but knowing you were sent. Everything that once confused you is starting to settle into clarity. It's like watching a storm finally break and seeing the sky turn golden to the remaining clouds. What once felt like chaos now reveals its choreography. And suddenly it clicks. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. And even when it felt like you were falling apart, you were actually being pulled together, soul first. Because a version of you that doubted your worth could never carry this calling. The version of you that needed approval couldn't hold this kind of power. That old self had to dissolve. And in its place, something unshakable formed. A version of you that doesn't just hope for purpose, but embodies it. That doesn't just survive the storm, but learns to speak to it. You didn't just walk through fire, you made it sacred. And that's why this season will make sense. Because you'll see how every delay saved you. Every no protected you. Every silence matured you. Every fall humbled you. And every rise, that was heaven's response to your endurance. You were never alone. You were never abandoned. You were simply in a divine timeline too precise to explain. When others rushed ahead, you waited, not because you lacked power, but because you respected alignment. When others compromised for recognition, you chose obscurity, not out of fear, but because you refused to be seen before you were ready. And now, the season you were built for is finally approaching. You'll enter with scars, yes, but those scars carry wisdom. They remind you of what you've overcome, but they also remind the darkness that you are not to be tested again. Because when you could have broken, you broke through. When you could have run, you stayed. When you could have stayed quiet, you started speaking truth. You stopped shrinking yourself to make others comfortable and began expanding to fit the fullness of who you are. This expansion is not arrogance. It's obedience. You are no longer dimming your light for people who live in fear of their own. You are no longer seeking permission to become what you've always been. You are no longer apologizing for being different. That difference is divine. That uniqueness is your anointing. And as your awareness rises, you'll see how others react. Some will celebrate you. Others will resent you. Not because you changed, but because you revealed. Your evolution forces people to face their stagnation. Your clarity confronts their confusion. Your alignment exposes their avoidance. And your joy, your peace, your glow, It all becomes disruptive to those still clinging to darkness. But don't shrink. You didn't come this far to fit into the mold you were born to break. You didn't fight this long to abandon your voice now. You didn't weep and wait and rise and realign just to silence yourself again. You were chosen, not for comfort, not for approval, but for truth, for impact, for divine service. The more you walk in that truth, the more things will make sense. The betrayal, it taught you loyalty. The loss, it taught you value. The delay, it taught you timing. The silence, it taught you to listen deeper. Every wound turned into wisdom. Every fall turned into fuel. And now, the very places where you once doubted are the places you now stand strongest. Because nothing was wasted. Not a single tear. Not a single night of questioning. Not a single moment where you thought it was over. All of it, every piece, was part of a master design. And now, you carry that design in your being. You radiate it. You live it. Chosen one. This season isn't just about understanding what happened. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be because of what happened. You are no longer the person who once questioned their own light. You are the embodiment of the very strength you once prayed for. The time when everything felt confusing, unfair, and painfully out of place, it had to happen. Because purpose cannot be planted in comfort. You were stretched not to break, but to expand into someone unrecognizable to your past self, yet fully aligned with your divine blueprint. And now that you're arriving into this new season, everything that once made no sense will start lining up like pieces of a cosmic puzzle. The relationships that fell apart were clearing the space for real connection. The jobs you lost were repositioning you for something that matched your frequency. The betrayals that hurt you most were the very things that unlocked your discernment. And the moments you felt forgotten, heaven was simply working in silence, preparing your name to be whispered in rooms you haven't even entered yet. There is nothing ordinary about you. That's why your path has never been typical. You weren't created to blend in. You were built to blaze trails. And that has always made people uncomfortable, especially those who only feel powerful when others feel small. But here's what they never understood. Your silence was never submission. Your waiting was never weakness. It was spiritual strategy. You were letting heaven prepare what no man could take credit for. This is why now, when your name begins to rise, it won't be because of politics, popularity, or performance. It will be because divine timing has collided with your obedience. You stayed the course when others gave up. You believed when nothing made sense. You kept going when all the signs said stop. That's the fire they couldn't extinguish. That's the strength that hell underestimated. And in this new season, you'll walk in rooms with a presence that doesn't even need to speak. Your energy will say everything, not because of ego, but because of alignment. When you walk in truth, the atmosphere shifts. People sense it. The unseen bows to it. Because you're not moving in your name. You're moving under divine assignment. Don't be surprised if people from your past try to return. Not everyone who knew you before deserves access to who you become. Forgive freely, but protect wisely. Your peace is sacred. Your focus is currency. Your energy is your responsibility. This season will demand more discernment, not less. More solitude, not crowds. More depth, not noise. And what will shock you the most isn't just that the pain had purpose. It's that you wouldn't change it if you could. You'll look back at your darkest nights and realize they birthed your brightest revelations. You'll see how the closed doors were divine detours. How the seasons of lack taught you to value overflow. How the silence shaped your inner voice so clearly that nothing external could ever drown again. So stand tall now. Breathe deeply. Smile softly. You made it through what was designed to break you. But instead of breaking, you bloomed. You ascended. You remembered who you are. And even when it didn't make sense, you trusted that one day it would. And now here you are, wiser, stronger, softer, more whole. This season won't be free of challenges, but it will be filled with confirmation. You'll begin to see the fruit of your endurance. You'll begin to feel the shift in your spirit. You'll walk in places that once intimidated you and realize they were always yours. You'll hear your own voice and finally recognize its power. You'll find yourself in conversations where your presence alone changes the atmosphere. And most importantly, you'll begin to understand why it all had to happen exactly as it did. The season is not coming. It's here. And now, everything will begin to make sense.